CNBC-TV18 Digital India Vision 8.0 in partnership with Google Workspace.
What are startups? Who are entrepreneurs? Well, they're the crazies. They do the unthinkable. When everyone is walking in one direction, they walk in the other direction. And when plan A fails, they tell themselves the alphabet has 25 more letters. So welcome to the Startup Panel, Startup Nation powering this decade. We have with us the Young Turks. You know, CNBC-TV18 is synonymous with Young Turks. So we have the rising stars, the entrepreneurs from two key sectors, healthcare and agri-tech. We're going to be focusing on that. And we've got with us the man who's going to fund them all, Karthik Reddy of Blume VC, Venture Capital. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in today. I'm Reema Tendulkar. So before we get started, I thought it would be quite nice to just understand a little bit more about these people, to know their journey, what their company does, what their startup does. So why don't you take it away, Dr. Dastidar?
Thank you, Reema, and thanks to CNBC for inviting me here to this forum. So I am the founder and CEO of SigTuple, a medtech startup. And I think belong to one of those crazies that Reema talked about, because I decided to start a health tech startup having absolutely zero background in the medical domain. That's probably as crazy as it gets. And what we do is we want to automate the manual microscopic review process that happens in a clinical laboratory today. So you see, when a lot of sick patients require their biological samples to be looked at by a doctor under the microscope manually. And that process remains manual in 95% plus of clinical laboratories all over the world. Our aim is to automate that through robotics and AI.
So you've got a device which converts the blood sample into
digital
a digital image, and then you use AI to analyze it and diagnose.
Yes.
So bringing down the turnaround
Right.
down. Okay. So before we get to Krishna, we've got from Qure.ai, the chief of AI product. So Preetham, why don't you first tell us?
Hi, thanks for inviting me. This is Preetham. I'm currently the chief AI officer for Qure. At Qure.ai, we have products that can automatically read chest X-rays, CT scans, and MRIs and create a preliminary report within a minute. We are currently live in about 2,000 hospitals across 80 countries, basically augmenting diagnostic workflows for tuberculosis, lung cancer, stroke, heart failure, and osteoporosis. When we are talking about augmenting diagnostic workflows today, there is significant issue in terms of staffing shortages. There is a lot of physician burnout. We are trying to sort of be a clinical decision support tool that can augment a patient's healthcare journey and solve these issues.
Thank you very much. So as it happens, I think both the gentlemen here are from helping us with the diagnosis, whether it's blood, urine samples, or your scans, CT, MRI, etc., and coming up with more accurate diagnosis, faster turnaround time. Karthik, why don't you come in, right? I think right now we're just covering the ambit of diagnosis, but there is so much more in healthcare startups. There is predictive healthcare. You've got robots assisting actual doctors in their surgeries. So how do you see the healthcare startup in India, the challenges, the opportunities?
It's great. The sectors that you're representing today on stage are just two of the many. So from a venture perspective, we're a generalist tech fund. Our history is that we started 12 years, 13 years ago as a $20 million fund. Come a long way. Now we manage about $600 million. And we've consistently stuck to one thing that we know best, which is to find opportunities at seed stage, right? So we come in really early. So the idea is to be ahead of the curve, to try and see what entrepreneurs are building and try to really be sort of at the beginning and the forefront of like transformative stuff. So within healthcare and AI and agri itself, Blume would have, for example, a Healthify or an Ultrahuman, which are trying to pick up data from consumer behavior and try to be more predictive on health, which you can try and get people into the gym all day long, but essentially if you're not using that data or if you're not capturing that data, there is much lesser motivation for that consumer to try and improve their health. So we're beginning to see those kind of models. Of course, diagnosis, you're seeing two great examples of what the Indian ecosystem has thrown out. We're also seeing, within diagnosis, we have a company like Tricog, for example, which actually does that for ECG readings, like how they do it for blood samples and lung cancer. And within agri as well, I think, the fascinating part about applications of AI are, they've been around for 10 years, like our friend from Google just said. And they've been applied to more data models and to, images which have been very, very specific to these kind of applications. So we have a robotics play called Nico, which actually looks for weeds and helps in spraying. And it's entirely done by actually cameras mounted on the back of a tractor. So the number of applications just keeps proliferating.
So just quickly get that introduction from our other two guests. Krishna, why don't you go?
Thanks. Hi, this is Krishna. I'm a CEO and founder of Cropin Technology. So for people who don't know Cropin is a industry cloud for intelligent agriculture. We try to solve many complex challenges in this industry, putting data and AI in the front. And some of the challenges like how do you digitize smallholder farmer, which is across India or Africa? What does that platform look like? How do you bring all this data together and talk about long-term impact of those crops going to have because of the changing climate or rising temperature, or what disease can happen in next 7 days, or what yield you can expect at the time of the harvest, right? So can you be so predictive? And can you zoom into a plot so that a value can go to a smallest grower, whether he's in India or Orissa, or he's in Africa, or whether he's in LATAM? Can you look at a microgrid of 10 by 10 meter scale to the choice he has made, the crop he has taken, the variety he's growing? Can you make it more contextual to him? And then you can zoom out to a country scale to talk about, okay, how the wheat or paddy or soybean is growing in the country, what will be the total output, and what should be the policy of the government, whether it's from the export or import or buying fertilizers at the county level or a district level, right? Or to underwrite a insurance program like that. So that kind of technology we're building. It's also working with a lot of research-facing industries who are trying to build new traits in the seeds, which could be a drought resistance or certain disease resistant, right? You need a lot of data to play around and predict those traits in that. So those are kind of work we are doing. So impacting the life of the farmer at one end and scaling that to a country scale where the enterprises, dev agencies, and government can take decisions as well. Today, we are deployed in 92 countries. We manage around 30 million acres. We have a crop knowledge graph of 500 crops, 10,000 varieties of those crops from these continents. That means how these crops are behaving behaving today in this changing climate, or what kind of pattern they are following. And we process around 200 billion acres of intelligence for our customers to use and take decision basis that in the real time. So that's pretty much we do. Thank you.
Very interesting. Varun, do you want to tell us? We've got Varun Khurana here with us. He's from Crofarm, Otipy. Tell us about the business and what inspired you on this journey.
Sure. Thank you, Reema. Thank you for having me. So just to give you a quick brief, see, we are a fruits and vegetables supply chain from farm to home. Broadly, the thought process is that when you're dealing with commodities that degrade so quickly, fruits and vegetables, right? We are talking hours. So in hours, the produce can change shape. So conventional e-commerce as it exists today is not really designed for commodities that have such lower shelf life. And which is why often we see, the need for when you go to a shop, you have to pick and choose because, produce has degraded. And when you order from e-commerce, you see variability in quality that you get because the produce has spent, varying times in the supply chain. So we have designed our supply chain, which can move produce from farm to home in as little as 12 hours. This gives us a very unique advantage because produce doesn't sit in our supply chain, and by virtue of that, we don't incur many wastages at all. So just to give you the numbers, while conventional supply chain sees 30% wastage, we see 3% wastage. So 10 times we've been able to bring it down. And that gives us a lot of power. You know, we can pay our farmers a little bit more. We can give our consumers competitive prices. And this also makes our unit economics work broadly. So that is, you know, the thesis behind the business, where consumers can get produce which is fresher at their home at a competitive price. Farmers can get more value for their money. Today in Delhi NCR, we do about 150 tons every day. In Bombay, we do about 25 tons every day. And actually, it is AI prediction that is used to actually predict how much we're going to sell the following day, which is what the farmers use as a guideline to harvest, and which is what consumers also use when they buy stuff on our app. So this is how technology, you know, overarches this whole end-to-end supply chain to reduce wastages.
Interesting. Karthik, come in on, you know, funding these agri-tech startups, right? One would think it's complex in a way that your models are based on probability rather than deterministic models. You're subject to the vagaries of climate. Like 1 degree change in the temperature can affect the crop yield substantially. There are flash floods taking place. So when you have to invest in agricultural startups, how do you go about it? And what do you think about the scalability of the sector to achieve it on a pan-India scale or at a global scale? The processes, the products?
So in India, I feel like opportunity sets fall into two buckets. One, which is essentially you go and build supply chains, or you build technology which sits on top of the aggregate, you know, value chain today. One scales beautifully because it doesn't necessarily rely on all the vagaries of what you just said at the ground level, which, you know, Otipy has to worry about. Whereas if you take a Cropin, they're essentially building technology which is like sort of geography neutral in that sense and can become a global sort of monitoring system. So when we look at opportunities, we see whether there is enough value in the technology that end customers will pay for, whether that's corporates, governments, you know, farmers. Farmers are the toughest to get anything out of. But you have to sit in the middle of that value chain if you're in an operational business, like he does in OTP. And that's how I would evaluate anything which is operational on the ground in India, versus a technology play looks very seductive because it's cool technology, but will anyone pay the actual value for it? Clearly, Krishna has shown that people do pay. And so we will usually try to bracket into these two sort of halves of how we look at agriculture as an opportunity set. But it's not easy. At seed, you don't know these answers. And as most people in the audience or on the stage know, failure rates in startups are high because that discovery is what we fund, right? So you essentially might have a technology, but might not be something that's paid for. And so the common jargon is there a product market fit? Product market fit is not whether your product wasn't great or not, whether someone's willing to pay the right price for it or not. And eventually, that's where most startups slip and fail or become very subscale and becomes inefficient. But, you know, as I said, if you take something as simple as crops, you know, weeding, and your what is a substitute product? It's a migrant labor pool which moves from cotton farm to cotton farm in Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, you know, Madhya Pradesh. So that cost is very, very measurable. The farmer's not going to pay 1 rupee additionally for any cool technology that you provide, right? In fact, it has to be more efficient at the same cost or lower cost for the efficiency that you're delivering. And essentially, the advantage that India has over most global providers, like if you go to an Israeli company or an American company, is we can deliver that technology at probably half to 1/5 the cost. And I think in that sense, we're just on the cusp of seeing the first sort of global players in health and agri, which historically was only seen as the realm of SaaS and software because it didn't require hardware and operational sort of cross-border migration. I think we're going to start seeing that. We're going to start seeing deep tech companies which become global, can become public, can become $1 billion of value. But we haven't even seen the first, so I am jumping the gun.
CNBC-TV18 Digital India Vision 8.0. in partnership with Google.